Yeah, so you could say the RAN is the bit that deals with the actual over-the-air stuff, and then the core is what processes it. And
to some extent, yeah. But I think the lines that anyway have blurred, and that's one of the.
And the core is obviously what links it to the internet.
It is. I mean, the blurring of lines, I think, and the fact that networks are becoming a lot more software-based is one reason why people think that you shouldn't really make that distinction. And you should just get rid of China from all of it.
Because it's not a hard cut.
Yeah, but but initially there was this sort of feeling, I think, among some officials maybe, and the operators are pushing for this, that, and not just in Germany, like you say, in the UK, this happened. If we remove Huawei from the core, and actually a lot of the operators in the UK had policies not to use Huawei in the core anyway, even though they were happy to use it in the radio access network. When BT bought EE, which was using a Huawei core, one of the first things they did without government pressure was to say we need to deal with that in the future.
Do you think they just read the writing on the wall?
I think they say that it was an internal BT. I mean, BT's obviously
they just
got
thought
some
that
government.
Ericsson, whoever does a better core.
I think it was a security thing.
Hello and welcome back to the Telecoms.com podcast after I've selfishly gone on holiday, which I'll touch on very briefly. And we're having a window, I think, of about a month of stuff before you two selfishly go on holiday. Mm-hmm. So we better make the most of it. I might as well just reflect on that. I drove around France. I spent a week in the Loire Valley. It's actually a tributary of the Loire called, I've forgotten what it's called. Fuck. Do you know your French rivers, Pierre?
No.
But it was, I can look it up on Google Maps actually. But that was really nice, and the weather was actually warmer there than when I went further south, which is in Bergerac, which is on the Dordogne. It's just down the river from Bordeaux and all that.
I only know that from the TV series with John Nettles.
Yeah, but that was in Channel Islands, wasn't it?
Yes, that's right. Nothing to do with the place Bergerac.
Afraid not, mate. And you know, Pierre, you've been keeping it quiet, but France is a pretty fucking awesome country, isn't it? It really is. I mean, and you know, you spend 2 weeks there, and you realise that you could spend a lifetime travelling around France. I mean, obviously the scenery is beautiful, but it's the cuisine, isn't it? It's the food and wine,
especially in that region. That's one of my favorite.
Yeah, I mean,
I thought you were going to say it's the people.
Yeah, I had plenty of duck, plenty of foie gras. Less said about the people.
Have you had sweet white wine?
Sauterne type of thing. Yeah, not a massive fan of it. Oh, did I miss a trick there?
Yes, you did.
Oh, okay. Le Cher is the tributary that Tessé, the village we were staying in, was on.
The singer.
Did you have some nice meals then?
Yeah.
Some lavish meals?
No, we didn't go too lavish. I mean, I was kind of subsisting on... You know, I'm normally off bread. Well, I wasn't off bread this time.
No.
I'm pretty much... You remember I lost all that weight when I was off bread? I pretty much put it all back on. So I've got to start again.
You can't get to France and not eat bread.
Well, exactly. Yeah. There's like baguettes, pâté de campagne. I mean, actually, I meant to bring some back. They've stopped selling... I know it's not the most exciting thing, but they stopped selling pepper boursin in the UK. I'm a big fan of pepper boursin.
Were you eating...
Pepper?
Black pepper.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's really tasty.
Were you having croissants in the morning?
Sometimes, yeah. There was a really nice little bakery in the village on the banks of the Cher.
Yeah, that'll do it. Croissants are like a disaster for the waste.
You might as well just eat a bar of butter with some flour on it.
And sugar.
Yeah. In fact, you commented, because Ian and I are friends on Facebook, I put up a posh meal that we had in Bergerac, and you commented it had a croissant on the top. It was actually a really cleverly, because this is the other thing that the French, I think, do almost uniquely, is this attention to detail, making things even more elaborate than they really have to be, just for the fuck of it. This was actually a sort of wafer of potato,
right,
that they'd curled up into a croissant shape and then fried. Oh. Yeah.
That sounds nice. That looked like naughty. An expensive meal.
Yeah, but it wasn't scary. I got to admit the prices weren't...
It was like fancy dauphinois kind of style.
Yeah, except it was dry.
Oh, okay.
It was just it was literally like a mini croissant made of potato instead of flour and butter. And yeah, I had a bit of foie gras. The foie gras is pretty pricey there. I mean, I know it would be anyway because they have to torture those geese to make it.
Yeah.
But
you just feed them excessively, don't you?
Yeah, I think they force feed them. I don't know if they still do that, but that's always the thing that was associated with foie gras. That's how you get that fatty liver, is just standing on top of them and shoving
just giving massive cirrhosis, basically.
Yeah. So it's not ideal.
No.
Let's not dwell on this.
Not dwell on it. But then it tastes nice. So, swings and roundabouts,
That's
isn't it?
It's rich in iron.
And and got to know Bergerac wine a little bit, which is nice because it's like down the road from Bordeaux, but it's pretty decent. And got to know Vouvray as a white up in the Loire Valley.
Not into white wine.
No, you're not. Well, this one's not a
It
bad
just
one.
gives me heartburn.
Yeah. And anyway, basically, can't recommend it enough. Stayed in sort of self-catering places that were both cool, except the people in the first place, it's booked through Booking.com. People in the first place, it was quite cheap, or it's quite good value. But then they kept throwing extra bits on. They kept emailing me just before going, do you want to pay extra for the sheets? And so we had to pay extra for the sheets, and the fuckers didn't even put the sheets on. So we got there after a day's driving from Hitchin to the Loire, and we had to make our own beds, which I thought was a bit out of order.
Yeah.
And then they said, do you want to pay for the cleaning? And I thought, normally that's just thrown in. And I was like, fuck off. And then they went, okay, just give us the 500 quid cash deposit, which I'd overlooked because it was hidden somewhere in the T's and C's.
Right.
So then they've got a 500 quid cash deposit, and then they go, do you want to pay us 80 quid for the cleaning? And then the strong implication is we're going to take that 80 quid anyway because the house is spotless, to be fair to them, when we got there. And we would have had to spend the whole of our final day cleaning it to make sure we got our 80 quid back. So I went, fuck it then, have your 80 quid. So
This
that's
is like
an extra...
the airlines nowadays. isn't it?
Yeah, so it's like
You
an
wanna
extra
sit down on the
120
plane.
quid, which made it less cheap. And I wish what they do is just charge 120 quid more. And I think they're just trying to be cute with the price comparison on Booking.com. Whereas in the other place was in Bergerac, it was a lot more expensive, but it had a pool and everyone was really chilled, and I even broke a glass and they didn't give a fuck. So sort of contrasting experiences there, but on the whole, they were both great.
Are you staggering towards a swimming pool and tripped over?
No, they were quite flimsy glasses. I broke just like...
I had an image of you looking like Ray Winston in Sexy Beast, which we were just talking about.
Yeah.
Collapsing on your glass in a drunken stupor.
I'll tell you another thing.
Burnt to a crisp.
Another thing I discovered. I'll remind myself of the brand. I've just bought some now. I'm back in England. There's a brand called Giffard, Giffard, and they make syrups, but they also make like alcoholic syrups that are about 16%, and they're designed so like the one I brought back was Préparation pour soupe angevin, which is basically lemon, sugar syrup, and triple sec. And that's really nice. And anyway, you mix them with sparkling wine or champagne or whatever, and they're all
It's
good.
like a turbocharge,
We had a
yeah.
cherry one there, and we were
Oh,
one-
yeah, like a black currant one. You can make a...
all that stuff,
kirsch.
all that here, yeah. And on the weather wasn't so good in Bergerac, but on the final day it was really sunny, and we had a pool, so we just went out there, brought out the cool bag, and I was just making these champagne, or actually it's sparkling wine. I got cocktails with this stuff and
Nice.
with ice in, living the dream. So yeah, on the whole, can't recommend it enough. We're already thinking next year we might drive through France and go northern Spain.
Oh, San Sebastian is
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
For food.
Yeah, the
Some
Pinchos.
Michelin star restaurants, aren't there, in San Sebastian?
Yeah, well, we went there for my mate Guy was the last of us to get married, and it was actually the weekend before I started in this job, so almost exactly a decade ago. We went to San Sebastian for his stag, and it's brilliant for a stag because the pinchos, which are the little skewers of
stand up.
yummy nibbles, they're all on the bar.
Yeah.
So you're guaranteed everyone's going to be lining their stomach the whole time because you're just
Although
impulse
The
eating.
Spanish don't like tourists anymore. They've been squirting
I
them with
know.
water pistols.
In Barcelona, of all
Yeah,
places.
Barcelona,
Yeah. Which is a bizarre thing to do to me. I mean, I can understand it if it's a bunch of stag, weekenders making a nuisance of themselves, but when it's old people having a meal in a restaurant, it's a bit odd.
In Barcelona, I mean, we go there every year for Mobile World Congress. It's a massive city. It can easily absorb tons
Yeah.
of tourists without it.
Very, very strange. But
They're just complaining about the accommodation situation because they're taking too much.
Oh, there's too much
Airbnb
foreign
Yeah.
purchasing.
So it's driving up the rent.
Yeah.
right.
That's why they're complaining about
So
it.
you looked into the story properly, whereas I just thought,
We
what
just
a
thought
pain
a
in the
bunch
arse
of-
these Spanish
You guys are good
Chippy
at
Spaniards.
writing the stories, not at reading them. Yeah.
So that was that. Actually, I'll ask you, Ian, first about Bride of the Week, but then there's a couple of little sort of not very telecoms-y tangents that I want to go off on. before we get into the substance of what we're going to talk about. But you had a bribe of the week last night, didn't you?
I did, a very unexpected one. It came through a couple of days ago.
Oh, it was last minute, was
Suggested
it?
to me that somebody's backed out, but
Yes, it
that's
does a bit.
terrible thing to say.
Do you know what I think? I might have been offered it months ago. Ha ha ha. And I turned it down because I was too busy.
On holiday. Well, they Virgin Media OT got in touch,
And they got a box.
Thank you very much, Luke. And they've
Yeah,
got a box.
they got a
two
box of
boxes
O2.
actually. It wasn't the same box.
And
that
they were
before.
they were responsible for one of the top 3 gigs I've ever been to in my life, which is when we all went.
Well, it was
for
a different
Queen.
box to that,
Okay,
but basically the same. It's just
Yeah.
on the side rather than at the back.
right. So there's no need to go on about it then, is there?
Well, I'm just saying it wasn't exactly the same box, but but yeah, it was watching The Killers,
Mm-hmm.
supported by Travis.
Which I think, as a metal fan, The Killers is a slightly overdone name because they're not very.
They're not a metal band, no, I
not
know.
very-
But and yeah, Travis was curious because I remember them from university days almost. But
Yeah, there's a
They're,
lot that I've noticed. I don't know if it's an advert on social
they
media
were-
or something. I noticed Bananarama's touring,
well,
and actually they've aged fucking
Travis
well.
were really well. Travis haven't.
Bless them.
I mean, but they're really good. The music still, I think. I mean, I used to like them back in I think 2000, around about that sort of time. And the lead singer kind of looks quite a lot old. He's got red hair now. He's dyed his hair completely red, and he's got glasses. He looks like someone who shouldn't have
Weird
red
thing
hair.
for someone to do, isn't it, Pierre?
He shouldn't have red hair, definitely.
AC/DC was
Fran,
lovely
what's
last
his
week.
name?
Yeah, my mate Gabs went to that.
What? Sorry, I just interrupted.
I haven't asked him how he
And,
got tickets actually because we tried when they first came
I
out
thought
months
I
ago.
thought he couldn't hear anymore. I thought Brian Johnson just quit.
Well, maybe he got better.
And
It's really quiet, actually. It's like, sorry.
yeah, and the England match was on, of course.
Yeah, yeah.
Which was quite.
Well, actually,
which
that's one of the
which is in
tangents I want to
in
go
the
off on
news
anyway.
this morning, even how the Killers put on a fantastic concert, but one of the things they did was to put the last sort of 5 minutes of the match up in between their set.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
I mean, they're American. They're all from Vegas. They're like Mormons from Vegas, aren't they?
Oh, are they?
Yeah, and
It's
apparently
even more ironic their band name then.
So apparently they'd been asked before it started, would you mind if some of the boxes put the England match on the
Right.
TVs, and they didn't want that to happen.
No.
I get why as a band.
Yeah.
But he was obviously aware of it happening.
They want
he was
everyone
asking
just
how-
staring at their phone while they're.
He was asking how's England getting on between songs, and then all of a sudden, unexpectedly, the last 5 minutes of the England game came up, which I think included the bit with that goal.
Yeah.
just about.
Well, that was the
included
last
goal.
minute goal. Yeah.
And then they launched into Mr. Brightside afterwards, which was a great timing because everybody was
I
just
think
jumping
that's
up
what.
and down
That
and
is,
cheering.
I've heard of that
and-
song. That's not bad, is it?
Yeah, well, it's a very well known song. Yeah. Jealousy.
Oh, that's the one.
Yeah.
That is a good song. Okay, I'll stop dissing the Killers. That's a good track.
Oh, they've got a lot of good tracks. I
Okay.
mean, I'm not the biggest Killers fan, but obviously a lot of people who went were. They were.
Yeah.
Including.
I think I
people
was
in
just
the
always
box.
offended by how they got a metally name and they're not metally.
They're kind of soft rock, really, I
Yeah.
suppose, for someone like you. But there was not very many people there that I knew. I mean, it was people from like the Mail Online who do
Okay.
sections about women's issues, and they're all like 20 years old. And
Well,
I felt I was the
the
oldest-
journalist there was specifically a woman's focused journalist.
One of the journalists that I was chatting to was like
interesting.
22 years old, and she writes for the Mail Online about women's issues. And the collection of people there were mainly people in their 20s. I was definitely the oldest person in that box out of the
Right.
25, 30 people maybe that they had.
Really? And a lot of them
the
were
only ones
like
who were
national
close
press.
were probably Paul Sandel from Reuters, who I suspect is a bit younger than me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, we met him a few times.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Cavett was there. He's
Okay.
definitely young. He's
From
about 10
Mobile
years
Live.
younger, I think.
Yeah,
So I hung out with Cavett most of the night.
because you knew him.
Cavett was saying, "Are you going to mention this on the pod?" And I said, "Yeah, I will." So
Yeah.
shout out to Cavett.
All right, Cavett.
It was a really good. I mean, he obviously.
By the way,
did a job
Cavett,
with
I
him.
remember who you are.
He
I've
obviously,
got a running joke to our listeners. So Cavett's the editor of Mobile Live, which does the same stuff we do, more or less. And a few times in the past, I turned up at press events and I sort of introduced myself as if I'd never met him. And one time he was just like, "Don't you remember? We've met about 5 times." And so ever since then, I've just been pretending to not remember him as one of my great jokes. It's a bit like with Keith, where we always pretend to be invited to everything to wind him up not being invited. This is Keith from the Mobile Network.
Yeah.
So there we are. But all us. It's interesting what you say, because all us like trade hacks, we all get to know each other because we move in similar circles. So we know Keith, we know Cavett, we also know our old colleague Ray and the rest of the Telecom TV crew, and a few others. But yeah, when you're surrounded by national, I get I guess a lot of the people from Nationals all knew each other, and you felt like a bit of an outsider.
Yeah, but they weren't. I mean, the people that were there were not people who cover telecoms. It's like a couple of the PR guys that I don't know from Virgin Media 2 came over and sort of introduced themselves, and then they said, "Who do you write for?" And I said, "Light Reading." Oh, well, I've heard of Light Reading, and it was like, I was the only person that actually wrote about them, rather than people from the Mail doing columns on women's issues. It was almost hard to figure out.
That's interesting because I mean, there's. You learn things like, for example, our PR contacts at EE are our friends at CC Group.
Yeah.
But then they've got a whole other arm, which we saw that time when they announced that they were selling fridges.
It's very much like that.
Where that's just very sort of consumery.
Yeah.
And it's almost, the fact that telecoms is almost incidental. They're just a consumer brand. They might as well be selling shoes or fridges.
Yeah.
I
guess they just get invited to these things by various brands, and VMO2 is one of them.
Exactly. So they're just saying, we're a brand that we want you to like.
The three people I knew were Cavett, Paul, and Matt was there from Assembly Research.
Oh, right. Yeah, Matt puts in some good miles on the
I almost expected to see.
He's always at a piss up, Matt.
Well, who's normally at these things? Who I expected to see was Paolo, but he wasn't there.
That's true. He's
so maybe he doesn't like the Killers. Maybe he got an offer but didn't take them up on it. I don't know.
Yeah,
but it's a really great night anyway. And as usual, it's like free food and drink, and there's a cocktail bar afterwards.
How are you feeling today?
Not as bad as I have done in the past.
All right.
These things,
you've done worse.
Not great.
Well, that's good because we've got another bribe of the week coming up after this, which is why we're recording on a Thursday, not a Friday.
Yeah.
We're going out for summer drinks with Huawei on a hotel rooftop bar in Drury Lane.
Good job it's not raining, isn't it?
Yes, although it always might. Apparently, the whole time I was away, it was just shite here.
It was.
Although we had that heat wave of about 25 degrees.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's been fairly gloomy since I've been back.
Yeah. Well, it was nice today and yesterday. Don't complain.
Yeah, that's true. Can't complain. So the football, that's good. Pierre, you're very happy that England won their semi-final, aren't you?
He's overjoyed.
Sure. We'll know on Monday, I guess, by the time this airs.
Yeah, that's true.
If you finally saw
it could be 4-1, 5-1 to Spain.
I can't wait for you guys acting like you won the World Cup for the next
That's true. This is going to be published and we all know the result of that.
It's better than the World Cup, though, isn't it?
And what about our magnanimous CEO giving us Monday morning off to get shitted during the game? I thought that was
regardless
good.
If we.
It doesn't really work for me though because you've still got to get stuff done.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying it's not generous.
Well, you can at least be a bit more half-assed.
Yeah, maybe, but I'd rather.
I'm thinking of
that I've got to get done.
I'm thinking if me and Andrew get something up Friday afternoon, and then I'm just looking at emails enough to get the freelancers going. They don't get the fucking morning off.
Yeah.
Then that'll be 4 things up since we last published something. That'll do me. Anyway, we'll see. As you say, you might think, well, while I'm up, I might as well just crack on.
I'm just of the kind of inclination that if I've woken up, I might as well get on with work and try and get it out of the way rather than faff around till lunchtime. But
anyway, so we'll know the result then. Obviously, Spain are the overwhelming favourites. They have been by far the best team of the tournament. We're fucking lucky to get there. But I did think we played all right last night, and that last goal by Watkins was awesome.
Yeah.
So and Netherlands weren't that amazing. So I guess
I thought it was quite a good match. Though.
Yeah, it was
quite an
certainly by England
match.
standards because all our group games were absolutely dire, weren't they?
Yeah.
So there's that. Yeah, just the only other little tangent that I wanted to go off on was politics. Obviously, this isn't.
You left and then
I know we just went mad.
What you've done.
This isn't a politics podcast, and I'm not going to dwell on it for too long. But politics does affect business. So
it affects telecoms as well. What is Starmer going to do about telecoms?
So in the UK, we had a general election. The result wasn't particularly surprising. Not even the landslide of seats was surprising. I thought what was most interesting about it was the quirks of first past the post.
Well, I think it's a sad day for British democracy, personally. I think this is actually a really worrying outcome for British democracy, this election, unlike any other.
They only got like a third of the vote.
They got a third of votes and almost 2/3 of seats.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other one, you had Reform, which is Farage's latest incarnation.
I mean,
which got 14% of the votes and about 1% of the seats.
The frightening thing is if you add Reform and the Conservatives up together, if you assume that Reform has basically taken people away from Conservative votes but not taken people away from Labour, which is probably accurate. Because I think the Labour shares
largely
pretty much what Corbyn got. then
I think it was less than what
it's
Corbyn
less than what
got when he
Corbyn
lost.
got. So basically, reform have taken votes away from the Conservatives.
Yes.
If reform didn't exist, and people had just gone, well, we're not going to vote Labour, we're just going to stick with the Tories, but unhappily so, they'd probably just still be in.
I don't think they'd still be in. I think the real story of it was.
Well, that's what they did. They weakened the Tories in seats that the Tories would have otherwise.
Yeah,
won.
but I think Labour still would have won the majority, would have won more seats than Tories. It just wouldn't be 170 majority, which is what they ended up with. I mean, the other thing to bear in mind is Lib Dems did really well, and that can only be a people going, I fucking hate the Tories, I fucking hate Labour, sod it, I'll go for the ones in the middle.
Yeah,
they always feel like a default. It's just one step short of not voting at all.
Yeah, I suppose the increased Lib Dems vote might have meant Labour got in.
Yeah.
But as you say, it's the same percentage or even less than Corbyn got last time round.
Yep, I agree. But on the whole, nitpicking aside, I agree with you. It's not. It's definitely
no endorsement of Labour.
But it's not an endorsement of Labour. It's a massive, whatever the opposite of endorsement is, condemnation of the Tories, which they deserved. And this is speaking as someone who's instinctively to the right. But yeah, it's just generally a bit sad. I'm increasingly thinking proportional representation is a good idea, not just because of how badly first past the post delivered this time, but also I used to think PR was a bad idea because it would always lead to coalitions, which would lead to gridlock politics. And now I think it's a good idea for precisely the same reason, because I've got such low opinion of politicians that I think just hamstring the fuck out of them. Make them get stuck in some kind of perpetual negotiation, so they can do as little damage. Good, because whenever they get something done, it's normally to the detriment.
But then that's another reason that the countries like China go, look, you're gridlocked, you can't get anything done, and we can push through these ambitious programs because we don't have a democracy. So
yeah, maybe.
I think there's got to be some kind of middle ground between those two extremes of first past the post and PR. I think there's got to be some.
I suppose if you look at it more politically, if you feel more sympathetic towards, that should be a bit colder, towards Tories and rightism, then them in a coalition with Farage types would force them to be more right wing. And that's, I guess, because so moving on, because I promise not to dwell on this for too long. We also had, while I was in France, it was all kicking off in France as well. Because they had these European elections where Marine Le Pen, who lazily called far right and extreme right, and I just think it might have been true 20 years ago.
Well, under her father.
Under her father, certainly. But I don't think... I find the political commentary on anything that isn't just card-carrying woke to be so infantile.
Yeah.
I mean...
it's representative of who goes into journalism these days, basically.
Yeah, I guess so. And it's just lazy. I mean, you're not allowed to make any comment on things like immigration levels or anything nationalistic or patriotic, perhaps is a better word. Anything that just says, should we defend our own interests without people lazily comparing you to Hitler and all that sort of stuff. It's all very tiresome. Yeah. But anyway, having said that, there probably are some aspects of what this lot in France would get up to that would be a bit moody to do with immigration. I think Pierre asked you, I don't know if you keep an eye on it, I think they're a bit more full on about immigration, the Le Pen lot, than Farage is, or is it similar?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
You haven't paid too much attention. All right, fair enough. But anyway, so there was that, and so everyone was freaking out that they were going to win because they'd done really well in the European elections, and they won. They did well in the first. They have they have two rounds in France, a sort of long list and a short list. And they did well in the long list one, but then they came third in the short list one, which is apparently quite typical of the French system. People sort of do their protest vote in the first one, but then they do their sensible vote in the second one.
Well, they kind of joined forces as well.
Yeah, well, that's it. So the one that won, the only one I saw posters for in places like Bergerac, was this, I can't remember, they're called Front National.
Front Populaire, yeah.
Front Popular Front. I always think Front is a regrettable name for a political party because a front is like a military thing.
I know, it makes it sound fascist.
Yeah, and we used to have the National Front, which were properly xenophobic. So I don't know, maybe it doesn't translate very well from French, but front just comes over as a bit militant to me.
Yeah, it does.
Anyway, and this was just this loose cabal of all kinds of lefties, of which the most prominent is this bloke called Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who's apparently...
Oh, he's a total nutter.
Yeah, and he's been around forever, and he's always been this... He makes Corbyn look like Rishi Sunak.
Yeah.
And so they're going to have all sorts of chaos there, which is interesting because even though the Le Pen lot came third, they're still going to have quite a lot of influence. And they still got their most seats ever. So the direction of travel is that way.
Yeah.
In fact, there's lots of interesting articles and podcasts about the overall direction of travel rightward in Europe, with the exception of the UK, although that remains to be seen how lefty Corbyn ends up governing us. So, and then lastly, the last little political thing to note is this thing that happened with Biden, with him just finally being proven to be too senile, too far into old age dementia to be the most powerful fucking person in the world.
Well, I'm surprised they can't invoke the 24th Amendment or whatever.
Fifth, I think it is.
25th Amendment.
Yeah, I think there is, but I think that's a real nuclear button.
Well,
they're getting there.
It sounds like they need to invoke the nuclear button because.
But the things that I found particularly hilarious about it is all these people suddenly acting like they'd only just noticed. I mean, everyone's known that he's been a bit.
Well, I think you see him tottering about and.
Yeah. And you figure maybe he's just having a little senior moment. Let's cut some slack.
But to be when he was presumably had a good night's sleep and had his morning coffee, and then he comes on like that, I think probably shows you that he can't cope.
Yeah.
I mean, he's going to have to sit in front of world leaders, obviously, and discuss issues, and he clearly can't do it, really.
Well, but they were, they were happy to do that. I suppose it's happened before. I think Reagan in his final term was a bit on the senior side. Now you're getting all these people like. I was surprised to see like a lead story in the Beeb this week was like George Clooney's gone, nah, enough's enough. I was thinking, who cares what George Clooney's got to say? But apparently he's very influential in politics.
Well, of course he is.
All right, well, why? Of course, it wasn't obvious to me.
Ronald Reagan, it's a country that puts Hollywood actors as president.
Yeah, but Clooney's not a politician, but he's apparently quite a sort of power broker behind the scenes. Anyway.
Well, his missus is a human rights lawyer, isn't she? Yeah. And he's sort of involved in all that stuff. So
okay.
Yeah.
But
what's her name? Something
Amal, yeah.
Yeah.
They're all
quite attractive, surprisingly.
Well, yeah, you'd expect him to do all right, wouldn't you? Imagine George Clooney ended up with some totally random five. And anyway, and so that's got to play out, and it just doesn't seem conceivable that when the Americans vote in November that Biden will be the Democrat nominee. But how they're going to do that? Because he's going, fuck it, I'm hanging around.
Yeah.
And his wife, who seems to be increasingly literally propping him up, is going, nah, man, we're going nowhere.
Yeah.
So that's going to be interesting. So
I think the problem is they don't really have anybody else who can step forwards and do it.
No, well, I mean, the VP is someone who everyone just
doesn't like.
Derides.
Yeah. She's Mrs. Woke, isn't she?
Well, she's not so much that. She's called Kamala Harris. She's just got.
She's not very likable.
Yeah, she's just got a very disingenuous, fake.
Yeah.
Appearance. I mean, she might be lovely. I obviously don't know her. And she does a lot of verbal gaffes. She's inclined towards something what Americans call word salad, where she just says something for about 5 minutes, and you're like, "What the fuck did she just say?"
Right.
All these sort of unrelated words and nonsensical sentences.
Right.
So anyway, we'll see. But it's all going to be good fun to watch it play out. And I mean, now it's stable in the UK, obviously. Then it's just a matter of seeing what Starmer does. But France, it's still very much up in the air, and in the US, massively. So it should all be good fun. All right, that's enough of that.
How long have we been going?
We probably did about half an hour on that, a bit less.
25
minutes. It must be time now to go out for a beer, no?
Actually, talking about beer, I've got an experimental beer I'm going to try in a bit that I must talk about. So let's talk telecoms now, shall we?
Why not?
I think
the Telecoms.com podcast.
Indeed,
an innovation.
A lot of our audience are sort of patiently going, make with the telecoms already.
They've not had any telecoms.
Yeah,
podding
and now I'm banging on about
weeks.
Fucking Joe Biden.
And you're talking about Bergerac and Biden.
Yeah. I think so. There's three things I think we should talk about this week. I think the lead one should be what you wrote about this morning and what Nick Wood for us wrote about this morning, which is Germany. Funnily enough, I'm talking about Europe. I haven't been around there. Germany sort of belatedly making a move on Huawei.
Yeah.
They were conspicuously the major European country to not set up the kind of bans that we did a few years ago. This chair's gone a bit weird. And so I think we're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
Then we're going to talk, I've only written one story since I got back, which was
This last month.
Yeah, this month I've written a story. But then again, on Tuesday, which is my first day back, I was catching up on my emails, wrote a story Wednesday, and then this morning I had to come to this. So there's my excuse. I could have got up earlier, obviously, and written something, but let's not get carried away here. You, however, had your nose to the grindstone. Is that the
Something like that. Well, you wouldn't want to get it too close to the grindstone because it's going to end up a bit of a.
I'm just wondering if that's the metaphor or if I've just mixed my metaphors.
Maybe.
Anyway, and you wrote a couple of ones which we're going to sort of cram together. You published one on Tuesday that you said telco Open RAN in parentheses accelerator wish list is from Cloud Cuckoo Land. Presumably the cloud. There is a little bit of a play on words, is it?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's about how people are trying to get cute about how the processing is done in the RAN, and you've been expert on that for quite a while. And I remember talking to you a little while back. You said that you seem to think it had gone away a little bit as a topic, but it's obviously come back. So we'll talk about that, and then talking about the RAN again. I guess that's the common one there. You wrote another one published on Monday, Open RAN players in retreat losing market share last year, which I think is very interesting because it's just talking about the Open RAN market and is it a complete fucking, what do they call it? God, I'm not very good at not very good at my similes and metaphors today. An albatross, is it? Anyway.
Yeah.
And then lastly, I'm going to talk about the one thing I have written, but I also think it's interesting. There's a phone brand called Nothing that I've mentioned a couple of times on the pod, and they come up with a new phone, but this time it actually seems to be worth it, but not perhaps for the reasons that people might have thought.
Is it an Android phone?
Yeah.
What's the company's founder called again? He's quite well known, isn't he? For other things?
Carl Pei.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was the founder of talking about senility. I don't think I'm in a position to
spend too long eating cheese and hanging around with French women.
Reddit.
No. He launched OnePlus.
OnePlus.
There we are. I said it just before Pierre. I'm not senile. So yeah, and he sets himself up as this sort of design and technology guru, but it remains to be seen. You got to do a bit more than just sort of have laconic monologues from a beanbag to impress me. So that's what we're going to talk about. Okay. So why don't we start? I mean, we both covered it, but I'm gonna pass the ball to you partly because I've done my usual thing of wittering on for an unforgivably long time at the start. And Ian, why don't you tell us? Actually, let's get your one up. Where is
my
it?
one? Might only have just gone up.
Yeah, no, I found
as
it.
You speak. And
so your headline is Germany to kick Huawei can further down the road. What do you mean by that?
Well, so as you sort of said in your intro, there's this concern within the EU at the moment about the use of what they call high-risk vendors, by which they mean Huawei and ZTE, the two kit vendors from China. Yeah. And the EU has this thing called the 5G Toolbox, which is partly recommendations about which vendors you should use and ensuring that your 5G infrastructure is secure. Everybody used to be.
They're into euphemisms. They replace China for high risk. Yeah. And they replace rules with toolbox.
Although I think the euphemisms have gone away a little bit recently. Like Thierry Breton, when he did a speech last year, actually I think directly named Huawei and ZTE because he got quite angry about it because Germany's not.
He does. He gets a bit stroppy, does Breton?
So I think what's happened at first is they come out with this toolbox and they use these euphemisms and then nobody does anything and then eventually they go, what we meant is get rid of Huawei and ZTE. So they sort of have to
which you go, what? Perhaps if you weren't so euphemistic, Thierry,
exactly.
Things would happen a bit more quickly.
And there's quite a lot of countries actually that have done nothing on the Huawei front. I mean, famously, we're no longer a part of the EU, but we've actually moved quite aggressively to remove Huawei from UK networks. Not really because of any EU pressure,
because of Yank pressure.
But I think the other thing with the UK that's quite sort of unique compared with the rest of Europe is that we're part of this kind of little spying group, aren't we? Called, what's it called?
Five
Eyes. Yeah.
Yeah, basically Anglophone countries.
Yeah, sharing sort of
Because
intelligence.
we don't like learning foreign languages.
Yeah, we all speak English, so we might as well club together with Australia and New Zealand.
Just a default. Yeah.
And like the UK's, like I remember being on all those calls back in 2019 even, and then 2020 I think they moved with like more aggressive legislation. And the situation here is that I think the operators have to have Huawei out of their networks by end 2027, I think it is. And various other countries haven't really done anything in Europe despite this 5G toolbox. But the one that bothers everybody and gets people really worked up, people like our friend John Strand at Strand Consult gets very upset about all of this, is Germany, because it's obviously the EU's biggest economy.
I've got to say something. I'm not going to name them, but someone I know from the industry, and they'll know if they listen to this who I'm referring to, WhatsApped me yesterday while a football was on, and they said, every time I see the Dutch coach, I think of John Strand. That's Ronald Koeman. I could sort of see it. Yeah. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah, so he's very upset about this, and it's Germany's obviously the biggest economy in the EU. It's perceived to be one of the EU power brokers, along with France. Really, those two. It's a massive country in terms of population. It's just really important. So for Germany not to have done anything is very upsetting to people who are sort of Huawei opponents, and they're incredibly reliant on Huawei. So they have Huawei, like the three big German operators, which are Deutsche Telekom, Vodafone and Telefonica, are probably more reliant on Huawei as a kit vendor for their 4G and 5G networks than operators in other parts of Europe.
And DT, most of all of those, is it?
DT, most of all. So Deutsche Telekom, which is still partly state-owned, has, according to John's data, but I think this is also backed up by data from Barclays and actually some sort of stuff that I've done, just sort of looking at them and speaking to people in the PR team there. They're about 2/3 of the network. That's 65%
which at this stage of the game is a really surprisingly high exposure.
Yeah, I mean, what they've done is, while these concerns have been aired about the risk of using Chinese vendors, what the German operators have done is basically just race ahead and build out extensive 5G networks with the Chinese vendors. Yeah. I think if you look at the Barclays data overall between those three networks, if you look at that and John's data, it's somewhere between 50% and 60% of the 5G radio access network in Germany is from Huawei. And
do we know why, when all this stuff was going on about 4 years ago, why the Germans just went, fuck it, we're not bothered?
Well, I know why they became so reliant on Huawei in the first place, how they're so reliant on Chinese electronics, which is, if you go way back before the 5G era to when people were transitioning from 3G to 4G, that was long before all this stuff was being aired about China. So people were never as worried about 4G. There was this thing going on a few years ago about 5G being used in everything from sort of insulin drips to fighter jets.
The 4G was still very much just your phone.
And it's like 5G is going to be everywhere. And it's like if you've got any sort of like
not so much
sinister government elements. I mean, it's total bollocks, of course. It's not been anywhere near as important as people thought it was going to be yet. I mean, maybe it will be, but... all this stuff about it's going to be in every single, there's going to be 50 billion IoT devices and nuclear missiles are going to be linked to 5G and all this crap. Yeah.
People will be launching nukes off their phone. Yeah,
this was the sort of pretext for the Americans to say we shouldn't have the Chinese being anywhere near it, because at the same time the Chinese were becoming quite a lot more aggressive, I think, under Xi Jinping than they had been, going back to the sort of early 2000s, the 2010s, and there's concern about Taiwan, and this is really where it all came from, this kind of push. But if you go back way before that to when we were kind of transitioning from 3G to 4G, that was around about the time when the Chinese and mainly Huawei were perceived to be shaking off some of that reputation they'd had in the past as just being sort of low-cost copycat merchants.
Yeah.
And actually being seriously...
Which I think, like a decade or two ago, was well earned.
That sounded like a dentist chair going up and down then almost, but maybe it's something else.
Like a barber.
No, that wasn't me. I was just trying to get this. I finally found the switch to fix this. I kept leaning back.
You were reminding me of Steve Martin in Planes, Trains and Automobiles, or John Candy when he's trying to get the seat sorted out.
I've got there. I'm good.
But yeah, he's what was I saying? The 5G, so if you go back to the sort of transition from 3G to 4G, was very much the time when a lot of the European operators actually turned to Chinese kit vendors. I think that whole You look at 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016.
That's when Huawei and ZTE
overtook.
started kicking everyone's ass.
I mean, Ericsson really kind of fucked up, I hate to say it, around that period under Hans Vestberg. 2015, 2016, they were in a miserable state.
They were off trying to diversify in all kinds of haphazard directions.
They went off and bought TV assets. They did stuff in the cloud. They did all sorts of
I've got a mate
things.
who still works for one of those TV assets.
Yeah, and they kind of cut spending on R&D, and they were just perceived as sort of falling behind. And then you had this data coming out. I remember we did a story on this, actually. I don't think it was me, but someone at Light Reading did a story on it about Huawei being the biggest kit vendor to European communication service providers. And it was like a sort of milestone, really, I suppose, for the Chinese, that all of a sudden they'd established themselves as the biggest vendor in the backyard of Ericsson and Nokia. And Germany became very, very reliant on Huawei, I think, during this period, as part of a reciprocal arrangement, really. I mean, if you look at the trade relations between Germany and China, I think it's its biggest trading partner after the US, maybe.
And reciprocally as well. Because the cliche is that China likes to buy loads of beamers.
Yeah, it's
and
beamers,
that
machine
sort of
tools as well.
Yeah,
I think.
but I think Germany buys a ton of shit off China
So they buy all these electronics, and a lot of that's obviously the telecom stuff. But you'd have other things as well. I mean, things like Lenovo systems, I suppose, and stuff.
Yeah, well, obviously China has long been the manufacturer of the world.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you just go and buy any bit of random electronics on Amazon, chances are it's made in China.
Yeah. There's probably, I mean, isn't Huawei kind of, and some of the Chinese companies obviously play a big role in solar panels and all this kind of thing?
Yeah,
and
no.
I suspect there's a lot of that going on.
I'm certainly not.
Apparently, they build them twice as fast as the rest of the world.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was a cliche. I remember when I was a kid, the cliche was just like cheap little plasticky things, and it was actually made in Hong Kong, although it was probably like Guangzhou or Shenzhen, all those ones that are just in the hinterland from Hong Kong.
Yeah.
But obviously, I'm not trying to imply that's all China does. They're very sophisticated manufacturers as well. But also Germany is in a sort of unique geopolitical position because they made that mistake of leaving themselves overexposed to Russian gas, didn't they?
They did.
And then Ukraine kicked off, and that left them in the shit.
Which is very much the angle that John Strand takes, actually, when he's pushing for there to be a tougher kind of clampdown on Huawei, is that in the same way that you didn't want to be dependent on Russian gas because they can sort of turn off the taps and leave you exposed.
Or America can blow up the pipeline.
Or America can blow up the pipe. You don't exactly. You don't want to be reliant on
where my money is.
Chinese electronics because Huawei could, metaphorically turn off the taps effectively and sort of cripple national infrastructure. Or, I mean, there's long with this thing about, Huawei, because it's a Chinese government company, it sort of has to do what the Chinese government says. And if it's got sensitive data on customers in Europe, it could hand that over to the Chinese. I don't know what they're going to do with it, but, or they could spy on politicians.
Something
NATO,
dastardly.
This sort of thing, yeah. So, this is where the kind of 5G toolbox comes from.
And by the way, just to quickly butt in on that, Huawei's got to do what the Chinese government tells it thing. That probably is true, at least to some extent. But I think what gets overlooked when people say that is
how has to deal with the US.
Yeah, is how much Western companies are still under the influence. It might not be the direct do what you're fucking told thing, but there's all sorts of indirect ways, either through threatening them with antitrust or through taxes and subsidies and tariffs. Totally. There's all sorts of ways the state, in a supposedly free and democratic country, can still heavily influence the private sector. Yeah. Anyway, go on.
What's been happening over the last couple of years is, obviously, as I say, Germany not really doing anything on Huawei removal. The one thing they did do, as a kind of concession to EU pressure, I think, and some government concerns within Germany when Merkel was still there, was the operators said they'd take Huawei out of the core network, and they made moves to do that.
Because that was the first alarm bell. Like, that's what we tried to do back in 2020 with Bojo, was like, okay, we'll take them out of core, but we'll leave them in the RAM.
So for people who aren't sure what those things are, there's kind of two main elements to a mobile network. Well, there's the transport as well, but ignoring that part of it, there's the kind of radio access network, which is all the base stations and masts and all the stuff at sites and antennas and kit, but also
the stuff we see on the towers.
But also the software that goes with that, by the way. It isn't just a physical thing. And then you've got the stuff that traditionally would have been in a kind of a big data center, really, but actually in 5G is being more distributed around networks into smaller facilities on servers. It's software based. It's the brain of the system, really. It's the kind of does the essential controls and stores.
So you could say the RAN is the bit that deals with the actual over-the-air stuff, and then the core is what processes it. And
to some extent, yeah. But I think the lines that anyway have blurred, and that's one of the.
And the core is obviously what links it to the internet.
It is. I mean, the blurring of lines, I think, and the fact that networks are becoming a lot more software-based is one reason why people think that you shouldn't really make that distinction. You should just get rid of China from all of it.
Because it's not a hard cut.
Yeah, but but initially there was this sort of feeling, I think, among some officials maybe, and the operators are pushing for this, that, and not just in Germany, like you say, in the UK, this happened. If we remove Huawei from the core, and actually a lot of the operators in the UK had policies not to use Huawei in the core anyway, even though they were happy to use it in the radio access network. When BT bought EE, which was using a Huawei core, one of the first things they did without government pressure was to say we need to deal with that in the future.
Do you think they just read the writing on the wall?
I think they say that it was an internal BT. I mean, BT's obviously
they just
got
thought
some
that
government.
Ericsson, whoever does a better core.
I think it was a security thing. I think it would have been a security thing. I think even back then it would have been. We're a former state-owned monopoly, and there's still some government involvement.
And we trust Swedes and Finns more than we do Chinese.
Yeah, for sure. And so they sort of thought that if they got Huawei out of the core, ZTE out of the core, not that ZTE was used anyway, I don't think in either the UK or Germany, but if they did that, that would be enough to sort of mollify officials and it would be enough to sort of deal with the security issue. And there was a move by German operators to do that. Deutsche Telekom spoke very publicly about it back in 2020. Timotheus Hertges, we're working towards having a Chinese free core. So what they've done is gone from Huawei supplying some of these applications, things like packet core and that sort of stuff. What's it called? User plane function, all that kind of gubbins to basically using Ericsson, I think, and a bit of Mavenir. Well, certainly Mavenir's been involved in trials anyway. And then you look at the other two operators, Vodafone under Nick Reed, who was the former CEO before Margherita Della Valle came along, said we're going to spend 200 million euros on taking Huawei out of core networks across Europe, which would have included Germany, obviously, to some extent. You look at Telefonica, obviously doesn't have any Huawei in the core at the moment. It's got two parallel cores. Interesting. We talked about this on previous pod. It's got one that's sort of all Ericsson and another one that's Nokia applications on an AWS platform,
so
basically.
That's them dipping their toe in a more public cloud core
so
thing.
They've basically done that, but they haven't really done anything on the RAN at all. They've sort of assumed that if they do that, that's enough. And under current government rules, they're not forced to do anything on the RAN. They haven't been.
Right.
But that's all changed this week.
Okay.
And this is breaking news because this has only actually just come out since we started recording the podcast. So there's speculation in the German press this week.
So you wrote it up this morning based on German press coverage.
Press, yeah.
Well, but then as we were preparing, you got through a statement from the German government, was it?
Yes, the Bundesnetzagentur, I think it is, which is the German equivalent of kind of Ofcom, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it might have more powers than Ofcom. It might be a bit like Ofcom and the CMA rolled together, but it's basically.
Do you mind if I read a bit of the Google Translate of what came through? So this is German to English Google Translate. Strengthening the security and technological sovereignty of German 5G mobile networks is sort of the opening statement. And then it says, federal government concludes contracts with telecommunications companies, components. Bear in mind, this is a translation, so some of it will be a bit sort of doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Components from Huawei and ZTE may no longer be used in 5G core networks by the end of 2026 at the latest. / the critical management systems of the two manufacturers must be replaced in the 5G access and transport networks by the end of 2029 latest, which completely corresponds with your reporting where in your just quickly before I hand it back to you, in your subhead you said, according to press reports this week, Germany is set to ban Huawei from the core where it had no presence, or where it has no presence, you wrote, and the RAN management software where taking it out looks unviable.
Yeah, exactly. So actually the Handelsblatt and all the others, all those kind of equivalents of the Times,
they obviously got a proper leak. Right. They obviously got a leak of that.
Yeah, they got a leak.
What I just read from.
I mean, I think it's. My headline was kicking the can down the road. The reason I say kicking the can down the road, I mean, for a start, the stuff on the core is clearly already done. It's like introducing legislation after the fact, and you're kind of wondering whether the Germans are doing this where the EU is going to go, oh, look, they've moved, but nothing needs to change, basically. It's not going to cost the operators anything to do this, but it makes it look as though the government's actually taking some tough steps. But this was done. It's 5 years ago that they were talking about doing it. If there is any Huawei still left in the core, we're talking about a trace, and it's it's fading very quickly, basically. On the access side, where they're heavily used, and this is the bit that's the concern, I think they've come up with this proposal that I wrote about previously, because it was being circulated even last year when we were at the Copenhagen event in October last year, the TM Forum one. And it sounds like this is what they want to try to do, is to somehow remove Huawei from the management system in the radio access network, which is something in traditional 5G, it's called the element management system, the EMS. And as long as you remove Huawei there, you're okay to carry on using Huawei's antennas and Huawei's equipment and all this sort of stuff. The problem is you can't do that. You basically, if you talk to any,
it's not open.
It's not open. So if you talk to, not the story I've just written today, although I do allude to sources that I spoke to a few weeks ago when I did the story on the viability of this proposal. Those people who I spoke to, who were very much in the weeds with this and at big companies, and you might be able to guess some of the names, but don't throw them out now.
Sure.
They all said you can't do it, basically, or if you were to do it, it would be incredibly hard, because what it would mean.
I really want to guess now. No, go on.
What it would mean is, first of all, Huawei having to. So the element management system is basically linked to the RAN products via a proprietary interface in traditional 5G networks, in traditional kit, basically. And with Open RAN, there's a move to replace that EMS with something called service management and orchestration, which would link to the RAN through an open interface called O1. Mm-hmm. And in that world, what it would mean is that theoretically you could have one SMO platform with somebody else's RAN equipment. And you can run both together. A little bit like the situation with RAN software and the kind of radio units themselves. Yeah. There's another interface called...
It's all part of the broader Open RAN sort of dream.
It's all part of the Open RAN dream. So in traditional networks, that's called CIPRI. It's proprietary. It's implemented in a proprietary way, which means if you buy your radios from Ericsson, you need to get your baseband software and service from Ericsson as well. In Open RAN, they want to introduce this thing called Open Fronthaul 7.2x, which opens it up so you can mix and match the vendors. Yeah. This is exactly the same. The problem is that these networks haven't been designed in that way. Yes. And therefore, what would have to happen is Huawei working with an EMS provider to open up that interface, working closely to do it under a kind of not an industry standard thing, but these two companies are quite happy to collaborate.
So it'll be sort of semi-proprietary?
Well, I think the problem is you just can't envisage it happening.
Right.
I mean, Huawei's been very, very resistant to any company.
Yeah, why would they? Why would they go along with it?
Huawei want to work very closely with an Ericsson or Nokia on doing this?
We'll ask them later over a cocktail.
Sure, yeah.
Can you imagine? A bit of small talk.
Yeah. So I think that's one problem, is it's just not a workable thing. I mean, there is, according to somebody else I spoke to, Deutsche Telekom has been working on its own element management system, which it would then deploy with Huawei's kit. The problem there, I think, again, is that you still need to have Huawei very, very heavily involved in that initiative, in that project. It requires such close coordination between the two players to do something like this that I don't see how this would be an acceptable solution to the people who are Huawei opponents. They're still going to go, there's too much Huawei involvement. You're not really cutting Huawei out of the EMS system because it's had to open interfaces.
And I should note that the timings are pertinent here because, and this is per the German regulator document, the critical management systems of the two manufacturers must be replaced in the 5G access and transport networks by the end of 2029.
Well, that's the kicking the can down the road thing.
Yeah.
I mean, for we're in 2024 now. Now, the UK operators have been told they need to replace Huawei by the end of 2027. Admittedly, there was a lot less Huawei equipment, 5G equipment in the UK when those rules were introduced, and we're going back a few years. So that was also an extremely long period of time to give the operators to do it. But to give them until the end of 2029. I mean, by the way, I'm not saying I agree with any of this. I'm not taking a position on Huawei.
No, and we've always said that. But what we're saying is, given the direction of travel of the EU and the US and the sort of Western Hemisphere, Germany has been conspicuous in its lack of adherence to that. We're not saying it should or shouldn't, but that's just what everyone else has fucking done.
And 2029, by the way, is if you talk to people about 6G, and 6G, we don't really know what that is yet. We
No.
don't even know if there will be 6G. I was talking to somebody last week while you were off, who's very, very well placed in the industry,
Just as
who was even speculating about the possibility,
of it not happening.
or that we have two standards.
Oh yeah, well,
But
we've both been speculating about that for ages.
Well, a Chinese standard and a non-standard. But this was
Eastern
coming,
and Western.
this was coming from somebody that would intrigue you, and I'll tell you
Okay,
afterwards because
cool.
I can't say it on the
No, that's fine.
on the air. But and so we don't really know what 6G is. But when people have talked about 6G in the past and when it might arrive, 2030 has often been the date that's thrown out there because they tend to come in 10-year intervals.
Exactly.
And they're talking about, so they're basically saying it's okay to have Huawei in the network for the whole of the
5G
the
era.
whole of the 5G era almost before we transition to 6G.
And
I mean, it's not gonna appease anybody who's anti-Huawei. Any of this, I don't think.
And that's and I suppose this is the ultimate question, which you may not have a precise answer to. But looking at a quote from this thing from the regulator, Federal Minister of the Interior Nancy Faeser says, quote, "We have examined the risks posed by critical components from the two manufacturers, Huawei and ZTE, in German 5G mobile networks very carefully. We have now reached a clear and strict agreement with the telecommunications companies," and then blah, 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 the same shit we've already heard about how the core has got to be phased out by 26, which, as you say, is redundant because it's already done.
Yep.
And then the bit that isn't redundant, they've got another fucking 5 years. So they've examined the risks, but they're basically saying we're all right with them.
Yeah.
It just feels like a massive fudge. And
It's
so
a
I guess
huge fudge.
that's my question to you is,
It's a
obviously we
huge
agree it's a fudge, but my question is, why is Germany so resistant to it? Is it because...
okay.
Is it because... my guess would be just because it doesn't want to throw its sort of national industrial champions under the bus. It's getting a lot of lobbying pressure.
I think there's a few
chill
reasons
out.
why they don't want to do it. There's obviously a lot of lobbying pressure coming from people like Timotheus Hertges at Deutsche Telekom, which is a huge company in Germany. It's the biggest operator in Europe. It's got this massive business in the US now. It is actually a kind of European telco success story, Deutsche Telekom, compared with most of the others.
Even if we take out...
No, I mean, a lot
TMUS.
of it's driven by T-Mobile,
Right.
but even so, it's still, it's still a company
They're
that's
still doing all right.
It's still a company that's doing all right, and it's obviously very, very critical to Germany as the main mobile operator and the main broadband provider. And they've lobbied a lot not to have to do this. And the fact that if you compare the UK situation back in 2020 with the Germany situation in 2024. 5G was in its early stages in 2020. The amount of base station sites that BT would have put up then, I don't know what it would have been, but they're at 75% coverage now. They would have been at nothing in 2020. Now, okay, you have to sort of think about 4G as well because of that, that relationship
And the
between them,
non-standalone and all that.
taking up
Yeah.
4G kit. But even so, there was a lot
But that
less.
still enabled them. I mean, one of the things that I learned from talking to people like John and you and just generally looking into it is the obsolescence cycle.
Yeah.
So it might be positioned as like, oh, this is going to cost us 200 million to swap out. But actually, if it's within their obsolescence cycle, it's costing you fuck all because you're going to have to change.
It anyway. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So now, and I think that was the situation back in 2020 is that people were doing kit upgrades and they were moving to platforms that would support, 2G, 4G and 5G on the same kind of platform. Maybe 3G as well.
So the only way it's a cost is if you're having to swap out the gear sooner than you would have under natural
so the
depreciation.
Germany situation is very, very different now. They've got I think I looked at the coverage stats, which are in my story, but I can't exactly remember them off the top of my head. But Deutsche Telekom says it's at 98% 5G coverage. I think the other two operators, something like 80%.
That's population.
That's population coverage. I mean, there's a lot of antennas.
But they probably have less challenges for geographical coverage because they haven't got places like the fucking Orkneys and shit in Germany.
But if you look at the number of sites, if you look at Barclays numbers and you do some extrapolation, you're looking at probably 45,000 sites that would need to be re-equipped. Like ripped and replaced is the expression that
that's
used
expensive.
in America.
Yeah.
Their Barclays estimate of the cost is $2.5 billion.
Right.
1.1 billion
That's a lot.
at Deutsche Telekom and about 700 million roughly with, there's some rounding errors going on there with the others. John's point on that, by the way, which you could say is reasonable is that if you work that out, that the price of security for Germany is 29 euros per German, basically.
Right, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah, which is one way of looking at it. But clearly the operators don't want to spend 2.5 billion on doing this. And it's not just, I don't think it's just...
all right, John, you give every German 29 fucking euros then.
It's not just the cost of it. I think it's the potential for service disruption. If you talk to the UK operators now about why 5G coverage in the UK maybe isn't that great and why it's not advanced as quickly as it could have done, they do cite the Huawei swap out as one of the factors, that it's caused some disruption for them, and it's been something they've had to deal with, and that they'd be further ahead if they hadn't had to do this. So a country like Germany that, probably prides itself as very connected and certainly wants to be perceived that way, doesn't want any risk to that reputation, doesn't want to have 5G signals kind of not being available in parts of the country, and the risk of blackouts and all this stuff that was being talked about.
So this thing's got to be done in orderly fashion.
Yeah.
And that's fine. We did it in orderly fashion. We gave them plenty of lead time and all that sort of thing. It's just that the Germans have started the process 4 years later than nearly everyone else.
Later, so I think that's one of the reasons. And I think the other reason, you remember when Sweden said, if you win a 5G license, you can't build your network with Huawei or ZTE.
And then China got arsey.
And then China got really angry. And then the next thing you noticed was that Ericsson's market share in China had gone from about 12% to about 2%.
China doesn't fuck around. Months. You piss China off, they reciprocate straight away.
So,
like, the biggest one for me was during the pandemic. I think everyone pretty much accepts now the lab leak. Everyone now pretty much accepts that this was some people dicking about in that lab in Wuhan and it got out. All this... someone got it from getting off with a bat stuff. It's just bollocks.
Yeah.
Or a pangolin. No one even heard of a pangolin before that.
Yeah. They're ugly looking things, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly.
Weird, small.
We won't want to eat one.
Which makes the theory even more unlikely. But quite early on, like still in 2020, I think the Aussies went, hold on a minute, we got to find out what's going on here. And then China just got all outraged and then just banned all imports of Aussie wine and whatever else they export. So they've got a hair trigger when it comes to feeling insulted, losing face, and they will retaliate straight away. So that's kind of what you're alluding to, yeah?
Yeah, for sure. And the big concern, so obviously Germany doesn't have a Ericsson being active in China doing things like this, but it's got BMW and it's got machine tool makers and it's got all these other companies.
VWs.
They'd be terrified about the repercussions for trade of them moving against Huawei and doing that. And
totally.
Rightly so, I think, because it would... And
so they're trying to fudge it.
The other thing that's actually on that point is I remember watching Timotheus Hertges at one of those panel things that you watch online. I don't know who was doing it, Politica or someone like that, but he was answering questions that a journalist was asking on this topic. And that was basically what he said. He didn't say... You'd expect him to go, we don't want to get rid of Huawei because it's actually really good and it's secure and there's no proof of any of this. He sort of went... We don't want to get rid of it because what's going to happen to German trade if we do?
Do you know what I mean?
He more or less said
so it's all interconnected.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I mean, I know I've only actually visited China once in my life. I visited Taiwan, which I will say is not part of China and will get me in trouble with the Chinese. But
I've been to Taiwan.
It's very... Well, I don't have much basis of comparison, but it feels very Western.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of the skyscrapers and the general vibe, but obviously still very East Asian as well. Anyway, but I've heard, not from personal experience, but from just, the grapevine that in East Asia on the whole, losing face / saving face is a bigger cultural thing that is here. We don't. We might be humiliated. Someone might take the piss out of us. We might fuck up. And then we just sort of bounce back and shrug it off and go, shit happens. Whereas I think they take all that face side of things a bit more seriously there. So I think I'll just quickly finish off. We were characterising this German move as a fudge. And maybe that's exactly what it is. Maybe China just needed to see that Germany gave enough of a fuck to fudge it, rather than them just coming out and going, nah, bollocks, we're not having any Chinese stuff because they're too dodgy.
Yeah.
Maybe this is their attempt to save enough face for China that they won't retaliate in a really belligerent way.
Yeah, that is one way of looking at it. So they present it in this. I mean, I think one of the consequences of this document that you just read out on you must have these out of your control systems, maybe that in itself is a euphemism. And what actually happens is, because you can't just take it out of the control system and leave the rest of the RAN there in a traditional RAN where it's all tightly joined together and it's all on proprietary interfaces and you don't have two vendors operating the same stuff, you have one. Maybe a consequence of that is that they have to take the whole thing out. Yeah. I mean, I know Barclays issued a research note.
But they'll do it in dribs and drabs to soften the blow.
So Barclays came out with a research note this morning, which I managed to obtain, as they say, that interpreted a lot of the German reporting as not a move to get rid of Huawei and the management software and keep it there for the antennas and otherwise, but to actually just get all of it out by 2029. So maybe if they talk about it in this way, like you were saying, it's like a face-saving thing, but because they're sort of saying it's acceptable to have it there for these other components. But what's going to happen is they'll have to take it all out by 2029.
Oh, definitely. If I remember tonight, I will, because...
Well,
we get on with plenty of people in Huawei, some of whom are English, but some of whom are Chinese.
Yeah.
And I always find that cultural stuff fascinating because it just feels like such an alien culture to me.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like going to Latin America where it's a different language, different vibes, but it still feels familiar. It still feels European derived. There's another, that's the one I'm going to open for me in a sec. We'll get to that. There's another Hazy Jane. Oh, there's some other shit there. Sorry, that was just us choosing some beers. Whereas there, you know, like I always used to be paranoid about going somewhere like Japan because just social conventions, like how do you greet someone? Like things like over in East Asia that you tend to, if someone offers you a business card, you take it with two hands to show respect. Whereas I'd just be all casual and I'd just grab it and stick it in my pocket and not even bother looking at it. And there's nothing to look at because it's a fucking business card. You know what's on it. But there's certain social conventions that you're supposed to do to show respect and all that sort of thing. And I'd always be worried, given how utterly slovenly I am, that I'd just insult people by accident.
Yeah. Although on the other hand, you know, if it is being done in that way as a sort of face-saving thing, it still would amount to the loss of a huge set of customers in Germany, and therefore you still feel that there might be some kind of, you know, retaliation, and that it's not something.
But maybe it'd be less severe. Maybe they learnt from the Swedish example that you said, and they thought we've got to be a bit more subtle about it.
I mean, I think the operators have, even though they've kind of carried on using Huawei and built out their networks with Huawei equipment. I think there's always been this thing in the back of their minds that it might happen. It's coming. You know, one day it's going to catch up with us.
Well, exactly. The Chinese won't be naive about the direction of travel.
Yeah, and I think what they've probably tried to do is, you know, you were talking about the replacement cycle, is ensure that maybe it gets pushed out to the point where when they have to do this, they've already depreciated that equipment anyway, which is going to be the case in 2029 for sure, if they're building equipment out in the early 2020s.
And like, I'll quickly wrap it up because we've got a couple more things to cover and we've got less than an hour. That source of yours that said that there might not be a 6G, or if there is, it might be completely bifurcated between East and West. You know, that's the direction of travel as well. All the American actions against China have ensured that China is accelerating its process of trying to be self-reliant on fucking everything.
Yeah.
But obviously it's not just going to be self-reliant for itself. It's got its sphere of influence, which is basically, you know, a hell of a lot of Southeast Asia, most of Africa, a lot of, obviously, Russia. You know, that whole block, like most of Asia that isn't directly allied to the US, i.e. most of Asia except Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, maybe Philippines, one or two others, is going to be in the Chinese sphere of influence.
Yeah.
And the border of that will be sort of Poland, Ukraine sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then Middle East seems to be decoupling. I was listening to one podcast where there used to be some deal they called the petrodollar deal, where I think Saudi Arabia and OPEC agreed to sell petrol in dollars. Apparently that deal's lapsed now and they're not renewing it. So there's a decoupling between the Middle East and the US sphere of influence as well.
Right.
Presumably complicated by all the aggro in Gaza and all that. And most people seem to reckon even once Gaza's sorted out, and if it can be, it's still going to kick off up in Lebanon and Hezbollah and all that. So yes, I think more broadly, and this is where politics and telecoms does very much overlap. I think if I had to put money on it, I'd say that if we're still doing this podcast in 5 years' time, we're going to be talking a lot more about sort of two different systems in the East and West.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
So yeah, before I move the topics on, are you happy to move on after that?
Yeah.
I'm going to say when I was buying the beers before we came here, I got my usual 4-pack of smaller, like Coke can size Hazy Janes, but then I noticed there was a BrewDog, a larger one, a 440ml, I think. It's called Hazy IPA. And it's 6.5%, but I'm having it anyway because I'm that hard.
Hazy IPA.
No, well, it's new, and that's why I bought it. But the scary thing was my 4-pack of Hazy Janes cost £7. This one tin alone cost £4.65. In fact, so much so I took it to the checkout rather than doing the auto checkout to save having them come and confirm that I'm
£1.65.
£4.65. I sent you guys the photo. Didn't you look at the price?
No.
Yeah, £4.65 for this one tin. And I thought I've got to get one. Just find out what all the fuss is about. And so you're welcome to try a bit if you're curious.
I mean, that's a pub price.
I know. I'm not going to. That's why I didn't buy one for you. Yeah, give it your first go. Tell me what you think. Seeing if it's worth loads of money.
No.
No. And
I actually don't like it.
Right.
See what you think. It's got a slight licoricey taste.
Is it fruity? No, but 6.5 is too much.
Yeah, I think that's all right for 6.5. But I don't see why they need this when they've got things like Lupaloid and
that's not as nice as Lupaloid. It's weird. It's got a weird aftertaste.
Yeah, it has got some.
They fucked up there.
It has got some weirdness.
Gone backwards.
Anyway, and it costs far too much, so I won't be buying it again. I think Beavertown's starting to get a bit up its own arse when it comes to price.
Yeah. They think
BrewDog,
because you put a load of skeletons on cans, you can be all
they think just because your dad was singer of Led Zepp, you can charge what you fucking want. But I thought I'd give it a go, and it's 6.5%, so I should be nicely lubricated by the time I flicked myself on Huawei later. Cool. Right, let's move on. Although focus is still on you, Ian, but that's fair enough, as you've been doing all the work.
Well, there's quite a good segue here anyway, I think.
Yeah, because we were talking about whether or not Germany can separate the management systems of the RAN from the rest.
Yeah.
And which gets us onto Open RAN and that sort of thing. Which do you think is the better segue? The Open RAN players are in retreat or the Open RAN accelerator one?
The market one,
okay.
Really. I think...
cool.
So the segue would be, obviously...
how viable Open RAN is as a thing.
because I think in the back of their minds, the German operators are thinking, this is coming. When it comes, we need to have, in the same way they did in the UK, we need to have a plan for what to do. We don't just want to be using Ericsson and Nokia. Everybody's quite concerned about having this Nordic duopoly.
Yeah.
Nobody likes duopolies, especially you. You've read your Adam Smith. You've seen how nasty they can be.
Yeah.
So they want...
I don't mind triopolies, though.
Yeah, that's all right.
In operators.
As long as you got 3, that's okay.
Yeah.
But nobody wants only 2. So the Open RAN was this idea to try and get some competition into the market, basically. And the way to do that was not to build another Ericsson or Nokia from scratch, which would be very hard to do, was the assumption. But there's some of these specialists that have been sort of around the fringes of the market doing various bits and pieces, like just the radios or just the software, but have never really been able to figure in these big tenders because proprietary interfaces meant you needed to buy the whole kit, basically, the whole package.
And they didn't have the whole
package. It, so they were kind of cut out by that. Maybe if you make
and we should say, sorry to butt in quickly, we're often sceptical at Open RAN, but I've got to say, as a philosophy, as a principle, I'm totally in favour of it. As someone who is in favour of a vibrant and competitive free market, anything that opens up the market, I've got to be in favour of in principle.
Oh, I get that part of the logic. I think, unfortunately, there are other things that weigh against it. But if you go along with the argument, then yes, if you open these interfaces, then you could feasibly have a specialist coming along and providing a bit in a system that is otherwise provided by another vendor or other vendors. That's the idea with Open RAN. And Deutsche Telekom's been, as has Vodafone, as has Telefonica, to name all the German operators, has been a really big sponsor of Open RAN. They've been, well behind it as an initiative, and they're involved in this group called the O-RAN Alliance, which is trying to set these specifications to replace things like CIPRI and to have this O1 interface that go between your service management and orchestration platform and the RAN and all that kind of good stuff. So they see Open RAN as a potential fix for the Huawei problem, that you can get alternatives into the market who can, provide you with a network. But it's not really going anywhere. That's the problem. That was a kind of market story.
Yes. So your headline was Open RAN players are in retreat, losing market share last year, and your subhead was a recent report from Omdia seized on by Ericsson is further proof that Open RAN is failing to hit its original targets.
Yeah, although Ericsson, I mean, it's a little bit of a slightly misleading subhead. It's not wrong.
How dare you, sir?
It's not wrong, but Ericsson didn't seize on it because it's bad.
Oh, I see.
So
you're just being totally transparent about the potential inference from that.
Yeah, I mean,
I suppose it was a bit of a mischievous season by Ericsson. You're inferring that they were promoting it.
Yeah, I mean, Ericsson published the whole thing on their website.
Oh, then they seized on it. That's a seizing, as far as I'm concerned.
It is a seizing. And also, I would say the Omdia report itself, the focus of that report wasn't to have a go at Open RAN. That's just something I pulled out of the report.
And you used Nokia as your lead image. Were you trying to say something there?
Well, I just wanted an image of some network stuff.
But
it's hard to get images.
But you're talking about Open RAN. I know. Well, especially we've got a new thing. Have you got a new thing where there's got to be a certain minimum size now?
Anything at all.
I know.
You can't. It's minimum size or it's under copyright restrictions. Or what I should do is I'm going to send my 14-year-old son off on a train to take random photos of masts and company.
Do you know what? I'm really
logos.
sad. I took a photo of the outside of an SFR shop in Bergerac.
No, that's
while I was
good.
walking around.
That's what
I did that. I did that in Venice as well. The Telecom Italia one we use now is a Venetian Tim shop. We've got an account that we're only supposed to use for occasional stuff with a stock photo company called Alamy.
All right.
I think Informer's about to have a fucking surprising bill from
Right.
Alamy because Andrew and I have got ideas to just restart our image stock from scratch because of various bits of dicking about. Most of our legacy images we can't use anymore.
It's ridiculous.
Anyway, but yeah, I was just winding up on that Nokia one. I just thought it was interesting that you'd mentioned Open RAN, you mentioned Ericsson, and then you put a picture of Nokia. Maybe you go for balance.
Well, the Omdia report that this talks about mainly, which came out in May, and then was put up on an Ericsson's website a bit later than that, is
Right.
I think they call it the vendor landscape, RAN vendor landscape. It's done by our friend Remy Pascal.
Yep.
Omdia, who's really good. He does all the forecasting and the data.
And I sometimes think he's called Pascal Remy. I get confused.
You do. And it's a big PowerPoint presentation that looks at a number of vendors and sort of assesses them on competitiveness and different criteria. But it's also got really interesting figures in about market shares and where everybody stands up. And that's where this headline comes from. Because if you look at the market now, you'd expect an initiative that's supposed to be, driving competition and is all about vendor diversity and is all about, ensuring we don't end up with a duopoly or only 3 players, one of which we can't use anymore. 6 years since it started, by the way, 2018, I think is when the O-RAN Alliance was founded. You'd expect that initiative to have made some kind of headway, wouldn't you, in 6 years' time? If we went back to 2018 now, or 2019, 2020, let's say, when people were talking a bit more seriously about Open RAN, and we said by the time we get to mid-2024, Open RAN, some of these players like, Mavenir and Parallel Wireless and Altius Star, they're going to be, they're going to have to figure in these tier 1 networks somewhere because otherwise it's not going to have gone anywhere, has it? And
we went to that Rakuten thing where we got lost down in the home counties and they were bigging it up and nothing much happened.
Nothing's happened. I mean, they have. So if you look at the market share dip, by the way, is quite small. It's something like 0.5 percentage point, but it's not as though they had a big market share anyway.
But as a direction of travel thing, you should be talking about a massive increase, shouldn't you?
You should be talking about a massive increase, and also if you look at it, what it means in terms of revenue. So what I did was I took the market shares data, and I analysed it alongside the headline market revenue data that I also got from Omdia, which last year's 40 billion that the RAN market generated. Mm-hmm. And then you can work out that the big 3 vendors, whose market share's gone up a bit from something like 74.9% to 75.1% in the last year, are basically making about 30 billion of that, which leaves you 10 billion to split between the others. But the 2 other really big ones in the mix, if you're talking about a big five as opposed to a big three, are ZTE and Samsung.
Yeah, and the rest are fucking
And the rest
nowhere.
are tiny. And also, out of that tiny rest, two of them are actually quite a bit bigger than the others. NEC and Fujitsu have a certain share. I can't remember what it is. But then you go down to this long tail of this kind of mishmash of all sorts of people, from Mavenir and Parallel Wireless to Comba and MTI and all these guys.
I'd never heard of Comba.
Yeah, they're a Hong Kong company, I think, that does radio units.
So the Omdia thing focuses on what it calls business performance scores, which is
Well, it does that as well. I didn't
sort
look
of-
it up.
Oh, okay.
I didn't look very much at the business performance score.
So that's
side of it.
that's a metric where it's tried to do one of those compound metrics where it cobbles together a bunch of weighted
Yeah, I mean,
considerations.
it's a fairly rich report that looks at
but
those things.
Here's a revenue market share piece of pie. Is that what you were just talking about? Yeah. So we've got Huawei 31.3%, Ericsson 24.3%, Nokia 19.5%, ZTE 13.9%, Samsung.
Do you know what's really interesting?
And then
about
NEC 1.5%.
that thing that you just read out. One of the really interesting things about that is, which is almost a headline in its own right, and would probably get a lot of hits if someone did it. So I'm probably not
What are
going
you
to
waiting
do
for
now.
then?
Is Ericsson's lost market share in the last year, and Nokia's gained market share.
Ah,
Yeah, which is a bit counterintuitive because you think with Nokia's setbacks in North America,
and Ericsson's great deal with AT&T.
and AT&T's great deal with AT&T, but on a global basis, Omdia reckons that Ericsson's market share has actually gone down slightly and Nokia's has gone up. But to combine, the big three vendors essentially are still 3/4 of the market, and the Open RAN crowd have gone down a bit. And if you look at what it means in terms of revenues for those Open RAN players, it's down from something like 2.5 billion, maybe, I think, in 2022 to less than 2 billion. So it's quite a big drop in terms of revenues. You think you divide that between all these different players in the mix. I mean, we're covering Ericsson's results are out on Friday, right? Tomorrow, before the this podcast is going to be out by the time they're published, but we can't talk about them obviously now because we don't know what they're going to say. But I suspect they're going to say,
We're
apart
having
from
a
talking about Vonage, which is the other news.
No, I saw that. They had to write down another chunk of it.
billion. Another
So they've written
billion.
down more than half of the value of it. They wrote down half before. It's take it up to 2/3.
4 billion
Jesus
out of 6
fucking
billion,
Christ.
basically. I mean, one of my stories that got a lot of traffic was it's the worst deal that Ericsson's ever done.
Yeah. Is that how you headlined it?
Yeah.
Right.
Pretty
well,
much.
it's pretty hard to argue with.
I mean, yeah, I don't see how you can deny it. But anyway, apart from talking about that, what they'll talk about is how tough things are in the RAN market at the moment, probably because people aren't spending money, and they keep hoping that this recovery is going to come, and that all this data traffic that Glastonbury people are generating.
So we're going to go into that deep in 2 weeks' time, because we're going to have one of our most regular guests who we've had on since almost the start of this pod, William Webb.
Yeah.
And we've mentioned him even when he hasn't been here once or twice, because he, way back in about 2016, was talking about this S-curve of the total amount of over-the-air, i.e. wireless data traffic.
Yeah.
And a lot of the assumptions made by people at Ericsson seem to assume that this exponential curve of growth is just going to keep staying exponential, whereas an S-curve says that it's going to start flattening off, and we seem to be hitting that flattening off phase.
Totally, and not just according to William either. There's quite a lot of analyst companies now coming out with similar data.
And the scary thing about that is if that's still what they're basing their whole business model on.
Yeah.
I mean, what's your plan B?
I don't know if you were on holiday or not when Ericsson's last mobility report came out, but that was another one that got fairly good pickup on our site, because what they've done is, they have the traffic stuff in that.
Yeah.
That's this curve going up, as you've just been describing. They basically revised it and chopped off a load of exabytes because they said that their forecasts from previous editions have been too high.
So they're basically admitting William Webb's point.
Yeah.
And, I knew sadly, we don't, while it makes for easy commentary and headlines, I certainly don't ever celebrate a deal going apparently badly as the Vonage one is for Ericsson. But, I'm saying, what's their plan B? Well, that's their plan B. And it's just not looking too fucking good at the moment.
That's their growth story, unfortunately, is Vonage. So apart from, there'll be some discussion about that and no doubt some analyst questions on that. But otherwise, they'll probably go, the market's still not in a great place and revenues are down.
No one's spending any money.
They'll probably go, it's coming back. I mean, I think a a lot of the analysts and the companies are guided by this, and they obviously have their own conversations with customers about what they're doing. There'll probably be some kind of pickup, I think, later this year. Well, the question is whether it's going to be, the first sign of sort of happy days again, which it probably isn't. It's probably going to be a fairly gradual slope up. I think it's not as though we're on the cusp of another 5G boom.
And the same goes for broader macro stuff. I mean, so we had a drop off in 2020 when the pandemic first came along. And then it suddenly perked up again when the first vaccines came along in August of that year.
Yeah.
Because I remember, because I was dicking about with investments at the time. Not huge sums of money, but I've never bought any crypto in my life.
Yeah, that's what my son did.
It was just, to me, whenever you see valuations falling off a cliff, you figure there's got to be some kind of correction.
Yeah.
So it just seems like a no-brainer. I don't know much about equities and stock picking and stuff, but it seems like a no-brainer when you've had a cataclysmic event like the pandemic, or like a major crash like the dot-com bubble bursting or whatever. Then buy at the bottom there, and everything's bound to go up sooner or later. It's obviously an artificially low bottom from that. Anyway, so that's why I started dicking about with them. But then, ever since then, and then I sort of, to use the parlance, exited a lot of those positions. But I stayed in one, and it's just not done anything. If anything, it's gone down over the last 2 years.
That's Ericsson, is it?
No, this isn't a stock. This is like a more of a fund.
Yeah.
It was one of the more aggressive speculative funds, but it's done nothing. It went down the toilet. It's about half the value of what I bought it for, and it hasn't picked up anything in 2 years. So my point is that as a completely anecdotal sense, and I don't know, I mean, it could be that things like Dow Jones or FTSE, the Nasdaq or whatever have recovered, but my feeling is that generally the macro picture has been quite low growth for a long time.
Yeah.
And there's not that much sign that it's going to suddenly perk up.
And just to tie that back to the Ericsson stuff and their results tomorrow, which I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, maybe they'll be better than I'm saying, but I suspect that's going to be the story. Is it's still not a good year for RAN spending, et cetera, et cetera. It's going to affect Nokia as well. I mean, they've lost this deal in North America. Both those companies are laying off a lot of staff. They've both got these shrinkage programs to try and protect profitability. It's what companies do, obviously. You can't employ as many people when you're not making as much money.
But
if you extrapolate from all that and look at this long tail of open RAN providers that are there, it's really bad, really, really bad news for those companies, because if a big company with all of its resources and all of its existing relationships and, that publicly listed and it's profitable and it's got cash on its books is in this situation, what the hell does that mean for people like, Parallel Wireless and Mavenir? And I mean, Mavenir's got another tranche of funding, hasn't it, recently, I think a few months ago.
Oh, did it? I missed that.
I don't know who these people are, by the way, that keep funding.
Yeah.
I mean, why... is it Sirius Capital?
Cirrus.
And Cirrus Capital, is it? And the other one's the Charles Koch, spelled Koch, by the way.
No, there's no getting past it.
Those are the two big investors, as far as I'm aware, in Mavenir, who keep putting money in. But I just don't understand why it seems like... I mean, I don't want to be overly negative to Mavenir, by the way, because I think its situation is not... It's not a self-inflicted one. It's not as though they've done anything bad managerially.
But you could say that they're
in a shit market.
They're a barometer of your story about open RAN players being in retreat.
They're in a shrinking market, a market that shrank 11% last year, according to Omdia, and that will shrink another 7 to 9% this year. You're talking about wiping off 8 billion. You love the word wiping off.
That's always used.
It's usually used for stock prices.
Stock price, exactly.
But in terms of market revenues, we're talking about wiping off 8 billion in annual revenues between 2022 and 2024, something like 8 billion. And this is a market where we're trying to inject competition and persuade people. Why would anybody want to go and compete in a market like that? Where it's very hard to break into. even with these open interfaces, it's. I mean, by the way, this is a neat segue into the other story. I think.
So actually, I'll encourage you to pursue that segue because we got one other.
So the other story was very much on the interface. Can you remember what the headline is again? Because
Telco Open RAN quote accelerator close quote wish list is from Cloud Cuckoo Land, and your subhead is operators want full hardware and software independence and the ability to migrate seamlessly from look aside to inline, which I obviously encourage you to explain.
Well, it's just more in the weeds than I expected it to be.
No, it's fine. But we can, I mean, even I can understand this stuff at relatively superficial level, so it's all fine. And then you sign off, good luck with that. Yeah. So, my understanding, well, I'll tell you what, I'll give you my Scott version of look side and inline, and then you can go deeper. So basically, this is the actual processing. So a lot of the stuff that goes on in a radio requires quite a lot of processing because for a start, you've got to encode and decode the radio signals, which is done by the baseband. Is that right?
Yeah.
And then obviously, this is data now, not just voice. So there's all sorts of fuckery that has to go on. So there's a lot of processing, and it's got to happen very quickly because we don't want lag that's brought about by the processors.
Yep.
And again, all this stuff pre-Open RAN, the silicon in there would have been to a certain degree bespoke.
Yeah.
It might have been branded by someone like Ericsson or Nokia, or it could just be in closed partnership with someone like Intel or Marvell or whatever. But now, as part, if we're going to totally open up the RAN, then this bit has got to be opened up as well. And there's two sort of philosophies for how best to do this, and they seem to be heavily influenced by how close you are to Intel. Is that right? Yeah. This is all me saying this I'm waiting for Ian to go, you've got it totally wrong.
No, I think that's a really good description of it, yeah.
But I think one thing I do partly bit out of necessity is I'm not bad at putting things into words of one syllable.
I think it's a really good description of it. Yeah, so it's basically...
You take it from there, mate. Go ahead.
Yeah, totally. It's on the chip side of things. It's all about the processing. It gets a little bit into this distinction between Open RAN and Virtual RAN, I think, where there's a slightly sort of...
which still throws me.
Yeah, I mean, the Virtual RAN really is about exactly what you were saying about in the past they've used bespoke technologies, telecom specific chips really to do this stuff. What Virtual RAN is not using telecom specific chips. It's using common IT platforms,
COTS.
x86, COTS servers.
Common off the shelf.
Why would you want to do that? Because if you do that, you can then put it into a cloud environment and you can run other workloads on it. You can share resources. You can get those efficiencies that are promised from that bigger ecosystem.
Yeah.
That's the logic of doing it.
And that goes all the way back to my first understanding of things like virtualization in the cloud when I was trying to understand these things 20 years ago, which was, let's say you got a server farm and it's got a bunch of chips and blades and whatever other components in there. The thing about virtualization is basically having those components running at max optimal productivity all the time, rather than firing up and down, depending on when something's coming in. Because with virtualization, you can go, okay, that little bit is dormant at the moment. Let's switch all the workload dynamically and immediately to something else.
Totally.
So that's kind of what's
exactly.
Going on here.
And you could have, the dream is which is not going to happen, by the way, I don't think, which gets into this story. But the dream is obviously having let's say an AWS public data center that is supporting
everything.
Everything. Not only Walmart and other companies, but they're doing RAN stuff there as well. And you could use the same resources for all these kinds of things and move it dynamically around and power it down. Kind of reduce the loads on that you're using at quiet times and. It's elastic is the word, isn't it? That they like to use. And obviously you can see the attractions of doing that. So to do that, you obviously have to move your RAN functions onto these general purpose processors and compute platforms. And that's where this accelerator story comes in, because it turns out that these platforms that are being proposed aren't actually that great for doing the RAN. Mm-hmm. Because the RAN's incredibly resource hungry and it's just really, really difficult to do it.
It has a specific workload.
It has a specific exactly. Yeah. So that when we talk about general purpose compute platforms, by the way, what people generally tend to mean anyway is x86. That's generally what they mean, which is, I mean, this annoys me a little bit because I think when people throw out this general purpose processor term, they sort of do so with the almost suggesting that it's a standardized thing. It's not a standardized thing. It comes from Intel, and there's actually only really one big user of x86, which is AMD.
Yeah.
And
one big vendor of its chips.
It's a de facto standard because it has a huge market share in the world of server CPUs and desktop and laptop PCs as well. It's become a sort of de facto standard, but it's still an Intel AMD technology, and actually mainly Intel certainly on the server side of things. And these x86 chips are not that great at handling RAN workloads.
Right.
And the two words that you used, inline and look aside, the distinction really is about how much you want to keep on the CPU, on the x86 CPU, or there could be an ARM-based CPU, but let's assume x86.
And ARM-based CPUs are increasingly competitive with x86 in areas where they didn't used to be, like servers and PCs.
Although they're not really anywhere in virtual RAN at the moment.
Okay.
I mean, there's talk of it, and there's trials and all this sort of stuff, and there's an effort to get them there, but there's still, it's pretty much, it's all Intel really.
Okay.
It's not even AMD, it's actually just all Intel. But even Intel acknowledges that its x86 chips aren't good enough for doing the RAN, because if it did acknowledge that, then it wouldn't be talking about accelerators. What accelerators are is basically using a bit of custom silicon to handle some functions. It's basically putting back in a bit of the bespoke stuff that you talked about. It's where the virtual RAN ends, is what accelerators are.
As long as there's ever anything custom, you've got some kind of cut-off between the COTS and the bespoke.
Yeah, and inline and look-aside, the distinction between inline and look-aside is how much of the RAN goes onto that that bit of bespoke silicon, custom silicon.
So, I thought you described it well. I'm going to read you back to you, because I was reading your piece on that, and I think it was this piece, where you described it quite well. Let me have a look. I can't find it now. You do bang on a bit at the beginning, mate. It's fucking bury the lead.
While you're looking for it,
oh no, I think I found it. Hold on, let me go. So your subhead is the two tribes of acceleration. The dispute then is largely how much of the RAN software should move from the CPU to the accelerator. An approach the industry calls look-aside, associated with Intel and Ericsson, previously kept everything on the CPU except forward error correction, an especially voracious, good word, bit of layer 1 code, the most demanding stratum of RAN software. Intel stumps up both FEC, which is forward error correction hardware, and FEC code in this approach. And then I'll just read your other paragraph. The inline alternative championed by Nokia lifts the whole of layer 1 from the CPU, brackets normally Intel's, close bracket, to an accelerator provided by someone else. In Nokia's case, that silicon vendor is Marvell Technology, the same company that provides layer 1 for some other shit. So you didn't say that literally. So I did
describe it quite well then, in the story.
You did.
Totally. So it's, in Intel obviously has an interest in trying to keep as much as possible on the CPU, because it can then sell, that's what it does, that's where it makes most of its money, that's where most of its resources go, is x86 chips. It doesn't really want to, it wants to promote the idea that these x86 chips can be used for the RAN as much as possible, and its approach is to only take a bit of the layer 1 and put it onto that. Other companies that prefer this inline approach are essentially taking the whole of layer 1, which, as I said, is this particularly kind of demanding bit of software, and putting that onto an ASIC or an SoC. And but the point about it is that anything you do that way is then not a part of the virtual RAN. It's become and the thing that I find interesting about this debate, and why I think it's becoming. You said when you introduced this section that I was saying it would become a little bit outdated. The reason I think it's becoming a little bit outdated is because I remember being at Fuse last year, and there's a guy that I know. He said this on the record, by the way, because he was on stage when he said it, so I don't mind mentioning him. But Joel Brand, who's one of Marvell's main guys on the RAN side. Actually had tapas with him at Barcelona this year. He's a good guy, but he's...
was that when you did it on Sunday when we were all a bit hungover?
Yeah, ate loads of that meal, but he's
That's what you need when you're hungover.
Yeah, he's an incredibly smart guy, and he's got like crazy bright sons, by the way, who work doing sort of like chips that you can implant into brains.
Oh my God.
And stuff, we're kind of commenting on what members of our family do, and then he told me what his two sons do, who are like 21 years old, and it's like, this is like, I can't measure up to that really. But anyway, Joel has very provocatively, I thought, at last year's Fuse event on stage, sort of suggested that Intel had given up on look-aside, more or less, and swung behind inline. And I think what he meant by that was, I mean, they're never going to say that themselves, but if you look at Intel's roadmap, they have these, I mean, you'll be familiar with this, they have these very sort of fancily named platforms,
the rivers.
Lakes and rivers, and Rapids is the one that they use for the RAN stuff. But the one that they're pushing out at the moment is called Sapphire Rapids. But if you look to the next iteration, it's Granite Rapids, and then after that we've got Diamond Rapids. I mean, when this stuff's going to appear, I don't know. Next year, 2026.
You'd think Granite would come before Sapphire, wouldn't you?
You would. I don't know. I think they're just making it up as they go along, frankly. But those platforms, they're not just, so the forward error correction, which is this very awkward bit of software, as I understand it, that just doesn't do on a CPU. They're not just doing FEC on the accelerator, they're doing some of the beamforming and some of the really advanced 5G stuff on the accelerator as well. And
beamforming, very quickly, is a way of actually targeting the radio beam at an individual device, which sounds impossible, but somehow they can do it.
Yes.
At least to some degree, anyway.
And it requires very complex algorithms, and it's all a bit like, it's like maths whizzes have to sort of work it out, and obviously it requires some dedicated silicon, it seems, because even Intel's saying that we need to have this, we need to have an accelerator to do it. So I think what Joel was getting at is that Intel's line that the CPU is good enough, that even they're kind of retreating further. They wouldn't want to say this themselves. There's a quote from Intel there, which they actually have in one of their press releases as a headline, like this: the future of the RAN is all on the CPU or something. But clearly it's not happening. Well, so, you talk to Ericsson, which is a big Intel ally, and they acknowledge that more of those functions are coming off the CPU in virtual RAN.
Well, and that's the dilemma that you've just alluded to with Intel. And if you don't mind, I'm going to wrap it here just because we want to get one more thing in, and we've only got about 15 minutes left. Intel is primarily a manufacturing company, and what it manufactures is silicon chips. And the way it does better is to find as many uses as possible for those things that it's going to fucking churn out of its fabs anyway. Yeah. So it's going to have a shitload of them sitting there. I mean, I think this kind of applies to all manufacturing companies. Once you've invested in the R&D and the plant and the equipment and that sort of thing, the actual cost per unit of manufacture is infinitesimally small.
Yeah.
So then your revenue and your margin comes from finding as many markets for that thing that you're going to churn out millions of anyway as possible. And in Intel's case, it's already got PCs kind of wrapped up. It's already got servers kind of wrapped up. Yep. So it's always looking for new markets. It tried mobile. It sucked at that. And it really wants this to be a major new market. So of course it's going to push. Of course, its rhetoric is going to be that as much as possible of the stuff can be done on Intel. And of course, it's going to resist anything to the contrary. But sooner or later, the facts are going to catch up with it.
Yeah. I mean, just to tie up what the point in the story was, which I never got down to.
Which was a...
So there's this initiative called the Acceleration Abstraction Layer.
Yeah.
And the operators, the Open RAN operators, the ones pushing that initiative, are very unhappy about the fact that Ericsson and Nokia have basically picked sides in this dispute. So Ericsson's very much in the Intel camp of look-aside, and Nokia is very much in the inline camp of moving the whole layer one onto another chip, which, as I said in that story, is Marvel in its case. And the operators don't like this sort of tribalism. I mean, Open RAN is all about you can mix and match, you can do what you want. So they have this idea that you could have software that can be moved around between inline and look-aside. You could switch quite easily between these two alternatives. And the point of the story is really to sort of
so that's not happening.
It's just not going to happen. The reason it's not going to happen is not actually to do with the inline and look-aside thing. It's to do with the fact that inline and look-aside themselves both imply more of the software is coming off the CPU and going onto a bespoke chip. And the point about bespoke chips is that it's not open. It's something that's tied to the hardware. And once you have something tied to the hardware, it's recoding to put it onto another hardware platform. It's not something that you can just lift and shift. It's not virtualized anymore. That's really the point of the story,
and so,
by the way.
To summarize my understanding of what you said, and then I'll move it on. Operators are like, fucking sort it out, lads, and pick one. Because we're not having yet another
that is
schism.
what they're saying. Yeah.
Okay. Lads and lasses, before I get accused of sexism there. Okay, just a final one. Just a quick one. I always try and make it a little bit lighter because Ian's shit's always really fucking in the weeds.
I've drunk a lot of beer. It must be because of last night. I
Good
think.
statement. Good statement.
Is there any more?
There's one more. Yeah, there's this. It's not too full on. It's called. I can't remember who brought this.
3. Actually, three's not too bad, is it?
You don't have to have another, mate. But if you want, there it is. It's about half the strength of the one I just had. So my headline was new phone that costs next to nothing. What?
That didn't last long.
No. I'm going to regret that later. New phone that costs next to nothing finally hits the mark. And there's a slight play on words there because the nothing in next to nothing was with a capital N. And that's because there's a brand called Nothing, invented by this guy called Carl Pei, who also invented, God, I've forgotten it already. OnePlus. See, I'm becoming more Biden-y every day. And I always just took the piss out of it because there was just lots of fluff and very little substance. And then when they finally came out with a phone, it was just like yet another Android phone, just like anything that might have been produced by OnePlus, for example, which is owned by Oppo. And they're all good phones, but he was making out like he was going to completely fucking disrupt the whole segment, and he didn't. Anyway, and then they come out with this thing earlier this week called the Nothing CMF Phone 1. And CMF is their more budget brand, for want of a better word. CMF, incidentally, stands for Colour Material Finish. And you're like, eh? But this is the point, and I think this is actually the point of what Nothing as a smartphone brand has been. They're focusing on colour, material and finish. What they're basically saying is, we're going to come out the same old shit as everyone else, we're just going to make it look a bit more funky. Which is fine. I mean, it's very hard. I sympathise. It's very hard to differentiate smartphones. The form factor matured over a decade ago. It's not
see-through.
No, they did do one that was a little bit see-through, but it wasn't even totally see-through. Yeah, the back.
Obviously, the front will be.
So that was their flagship one, and this is like their budget one. And it's got a couple of gimmicks. Like there's some little screws, and you can unscrew the back plate and put on a different colour one. Like anyone's going to bother doing that. Can you imagine you're getting ready to go out and you think, oh shit, I better change the fucking colour of the back of my phone. Yeah. Maybe some people do that.
Well, there wouldn't be a case over it anyway.
Well, quite. Yeah, if you've got any brains, you'll put a protector over it.
Although it's only 180, so maybe people will be like, eh.
Well, that's it. Yeah, you kind of stole my thunder there, but that's what I was leading up to. The thing about it was not so much the design and all that sort of thing, but the fact that the thing comes in at 180 quid. Now, 180 quid for a smartphone, as I wrote in my piece, almost impulse purchase territory, in so much as, a new proper iPhone's about £1,000, a new flagship Samsung's about £1,000. Even the Pixels that I buy, I think I bought this one for about 600. Ones I bought my family.
How much is the Samsung S24?
Which is that the latest one?
Well, that's the one that they're using at the Olympics, interestingly, to do sort of as cameras on boats.
Oh, is that the foldy one?
I don't know if it's folded, but apparently
Andrew
it's got such a shit on camera that people are using that as the cameramen are using that instead of cameras.
Or so their PRs would
like
have us believe.
700.
Oh, they must be right, Scott.
Because they'd never fucking overstate things, would they?
This is £800.
Well, Andrew wrote that about us today, for us today. His headline was Samsung. That might not be the same one. No, that's the Galaxy Z Fold. That's not what you're talking about.
No,
but there was
£800.
Wow.
But that one they were going on about the Olympics as well. Obviously, Samsung's just chuck loads of money at the French so that they can be associated with loads of Olympic stuff. I think we both know that just because the PR says that it's being used as the official fucking phone of the Olympics, that just means that they've bribed the Olympics, isn't it?
Well, in fairness to Orange, by the way, this was Bertrand Roger, who's the technical guy on the event side.
All right, so they bribed Orange then.
You're going to get me in trouble. You're going to get my trip cancelled with this podcast.
Well, I'll stress
my little jolly to the Olympics.
I mean, anyone who listens to the podcast knows I use the bribe in a deliberately mischievous way. I don't mean a sort of brown envelope of cash under the table. I just mean any transaction. We get bought the odd thing. People bring beers. They take us on trips. They take you out to see the Killers. I call all of that a bribe just because I like to sort of err on the side of sort of mega transparency.
Yes.
But, so this thing, I thought what was interesting about it, and it links to another story that we wrote earlier on in the week. Nick wrote for us. Again, I think it was some Omdia research about a chip maker called MediaTek.
Oh, yeah.
And his headline was, "The rise of cheaper 5G phones lifts MediaTek above Qualcomm."
They do ARPUs,
ARPUs?
application processing units.
Yeah, ARPU's average revenue
Yeah, I know.
per
I'm
user,
just
isn't
using
it?
it in a different way.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, but that's not ARPU.
I know.
You're just talking shit.
APU.
ARPU.
They do APUs.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Application. I think they do modems as well, to
Yeah,
be
they
fair,
do modems
MediaTek.
as well. Yeah.
But yeah, application processors is basically the chips that go into phones that make them little computers.
Yeah, the CPUs for phones.
Yeah, exactly. And on that, that's all that this was measuring was that, not the modem side of it. MediaTek's overtaken Qualcomm. Qualcomm's always been the daddy.
Yeah.
Qualcomm remains the daddy when it comes to modems as well, and that's one of the reasons. I mean, when I first started getting into this space was when they just launched the Snapdragon brand, and they started going big on application processors, as we always called the CPUs for phones back then, and perhaps still do to some extent. And anyway, and the story is that and MediaTek was always the cheaper one.
Yeah.
And the purpose of this story is to say MediaTek's overtaken Qualcomm in terms of market share, so that'll be volume rather than value.
So MediaTek's doing stuff for nothing?
Yeah, so this phone, this sub brand of nothing, which is called
Something.
CMF. Yeah, it's called CMF. That's got a MediaTek in it,
Right.
which apparently is still done on a 4-nanometer processor. It's very cutting edge.
Wow.
And it's probably good enough. I mean, that's the other thing people have realised is if you look at your phone, how often do you ask your phone to do much processor heavy lifting?
Yeah.
Not really that much. I mean, the video quality is probably more a product of your connectivity than it is the processor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's more about sort of battery life, isn't it? And things like that.
Yeah, well, and that's actually an argument to go for a shitter processor because they tend to be less energy hungry.
Well, Apple thinks otherwise with this new AI thing because they want to do it all locally. So it's
No, that's a good
it's
point.
clever move to
If you're going to go big on AI, and you don't want to be reliant on there being a hell of a massive data transfer between your phone and the mobile edge for all the AI processing, you do want as much of it as possible done on board. But I think that's the broader thing that I want to mention in the 5 minutes we got left, is to say, well done, Nothing, for finally getting it right. I've generally thought their stuff was a bit of a disappointment so far. But, as I said in my concluding paragraph to my piece, I said maybe that was a cunning plan all along. Seed the market with promises of exotic, disruptive, and therefore presumably expensive smartphone design, only to then surprise everyone with aggressively low price points. Nothing has so far lived up to its name with respect to smartphone market share, but the cheap and cheerful CMF Phone 1 could be set to change that. And then more broadly, you look at how MediaTek has, perhaps fleetingly, but overtaken Qualcomm. And the broader takeaway I'm taking from it is that more and more people are buying cheaper phones. There'll still be loads of people who buy the flagship. Certainly people who buy subsidised ones as part of a postpaid sort of plan.
Yeah.
Or people who've just got used to it. But, like sometimes when I bought phones for my kids, I found stuff between £200 and £400 that's perfectly fine.
I mean, my plan at the moment, which is with this, I think it's a 15, but this is 1 year old now.
Yeah.
So I've got a year left,
iPhone.
and then this is really expensive right now. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sure I've talked about my tariff before, but it's like something like £80 a month.
Yeah.
But once this is paid off in 12 months' time, I'm
You're going to
just
sit
going
on
to go.
it, sweat the asset for a while.
Yeah, it works really well. And I don't want one of those new iPhones like the 16 or the 17. What's that going to do for me? It's going to give me some irritating voice telling me that I'm
Do you know what I mean?
ChatGPT. And
Some fucking howl telling you that
I don't want any AI.
you haven't done
in my
enough steps
phone
today.
anyway. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And it's also quite interesting in a sort of global sense because the lower the price point of a decent smartphone gets, the more and more people in places like Africa can join the party,
yeah.
which has got to be great for sort of economic development, leaving aside whatever kind of fucked up government they might have to deal with. So I just think more and more people are buying phones for like £200 or so, whereas we used to think that £600, £700, £800 a grand was quite normal. So there we go. So that's that one of that. Unless any of you got any other comments. I know Pierre's got a meeting in a minute. we'll wrap it up there. But I'm honestly, if someone young who didn't have much money, or just someone who didn't have much money was wondering, I might, even though I know nothing about this phone, it's been quite well reviewed, by the way. I linked to a couple of reviews, and it's getting top reviews for the price point. So I reckon buying that Nothing CMF Phone 1, which is what they call it, for 180 quid, it looks like you can't go wrong. So there we go.
I shall take your advice potentially when I.
Yeah, exactly. If you're going to buy one for Alex or whatever.
Well, I could do that. I could buy one for Alex. He's got a really crap phone. That's like an old iPhone that's on an O2 account, but it only costs 12 quid a month, and he gets like 10 gigabytes or something.
Yeah,
I pay 12 for 12 gigs.
Yeah, but he's on a is he on a SIM only contract? Yeah. So you keep him on that SIM only contract, and that's fine. Once you're SIM only, I think it's very hard to go back to a subsidised phone.
It's
anyway.
people like him that the reason that our industry is in a disastrous
tight ass bloody Frenchman.
I pay 80 quid. He pays 12.
Blame it on Wi-Fi.
Well, actually, I'm a tight ass. I pay 60 quid a month for 100 gig or so of data, and then I dosh it out among all my family. So that 60 is diluted down to 15 per head if you look at it that way.
And that's more gigs than me.
There we go. So I'm the problem.
I could have gone like 13 and get Paramount Plus free for a year.
But do you have to pay a little bit for your family members as well, presumably just to have a basic plan?
Yeah, that's true. But really basic, like £5 or something.
Yeah, okay. That's a good way of doing it.
I don't even know if I pay that. Anyway, I think the aggregate it comes to is about 60 quid a month.
Right.
Until one of them dials up some moody number that I won't go into now. So that's happened. Okay.
On that bombshell.
Yeah, on that bombshell. Okay. So yes, you got 3 more coming from us. Next 3 should all have guests. Yeah, with guests. Hopefully Ed Barton, who's been on several times before. So thanks a lot for listening, and make sure you join us for that one.